Naughty Dog has had some iconic characters. Crash Bandicoot has that dorky, silly charm, while Jak and Daxter made us love whatever an Ottsel is. But Uncharted gave us a more photorealistic but equally loved character, Nathan Drake. To honor the Indiana Jones of video games, we're bringing you his story with the entire Uncharted timeline. So let's track his wild journey one clue at a time. Oh, and be sure to subscribe to the Leaderboard. Nate's younger years. Nathan Drake was born Nathan Morgan, and he had a less than ideal childhood. His mother, Cassandra Morgan, inspired his deep curiosity about history, which led him to a career we could loosely describe as gunslinging archaeologist. Unfortunately, she died when he was still very young. After Cassandra passed, Nate's father disowned him and their estate. Like I said, it was a less than ideal childhood. Nate and his older brother Sam end up at the St. Francis orphanage, where Nate would end up getting in lots of fights with other kids. Sam eventually gets discharged from the orphanage, but he always helps Nate sneak out. One night, Sam reveals he tracked down whoever bought their mother's stuff. Together, the two ride on Sam's new chopper to break into this person's house. You could call it Nate's first tomb raiding adventure. After some nighttime driving, they reach a creepy, gated mansion. Inside, they find their mother's journal, but they also run into the owner of the house, Evelyn. At first, she holds them at gunpoint and calls the cops, but she quickly realizes who they are. However, just when the police shows up, she has a heart attack, forcing the boys to flee. After getting to safety, Sam and Nate change their last names to Drake to honor their mom's theory about the illegitimate heirs of the pirate Sir Francis Drake. And the rest is history. Sic parvis magna, greatness from small beginnings. 16 years before Drake's fortune, Nate ends up in Cartagena, Colombia, where he's surviving on the streets. He pickpockets a key from Victor Sullivan, using it to open a museum display to take Sir Francis Drake's ring. However, he gets caught by Catherine Marlowe, the leader of an English secret society. Sully helps Nate escape, and from there, the two forge an unbreakable bond. 8 years before Drake's fortune, we find Nate and Sam in a Panama prison. They team up with Rafe Adler, a treasure hunter, and the trio search for the pirate Henry Avery's treasure. They get a hold of a crucifix, signaling that the next step in securing Avery's treasure lies in a cathedral in Scotland. Unfortunately, they get in a scuffle with a corrupt guard, forcing them to flee the prison. Nate and Rafe break out, but Sam doesn't make it. With Sam gone, Nate gives up on finding Avery's treasure, so Rafe heads to Scotland alone, while Nate continues his own separate treasure hunting journey. Uncharted Golden Abyss. A few years before the events of Uncharted Drake's fortune, we find Nate somewhere in Panama, this time not in prison. A fellow treasure hunter named Jason Dante hired him to track down something important. While there, Nate meets Marissa Chase, one of Dante's colleagues, and the two hit it off. But as it turns out, Dante was working with a local revolutionary leader named Roberto Guerro. His soldiers take a mysterious amulet from Chase and take Nate prisoner. He breaks free and meets Chase, and they retrieve her amulet. Nate and Chase narrowly escape with their lives, and they make their way to her grandfather's house. He believed that the amulet held the secret to finding Quivera, an ancient city full of riches. Nate and Chase head to some nearby catacombs to get the next clue for their journey, the Sword of Stephen. On their way out of the catacombs, Guerro takes Chase hostage, forcing Nate to give up the sword. But Nate calls in Sully as backup to mount a rescue operation. After looking at some markings on the Sword of Stephen, Nate deduces they need to head to the Temple of the Serpents. Sully stays behind to hijack a helicopter, while Nate digs deeper into the temple, saving Chase from some soldiers who set up explosives around the structure. Chase is safe, but she wants to go further into the temple, claiming that Quivera awaits. Nate figures out that her amulet was the literal key to unlocking the door to the underground city. Inside, they find the Golden Abyss, a cavern full of gold, radioactive gold, that is. Dante quickly joins them in the cavern, revealing his plan to mine all the deadly gold and spread it through the black market. Nate will not let that happen, so he gives Dante a beatdown and leaves him for dead in the cavern. Chase and Nate escape the Golden Abyss, detonating the bombs that Guerro's men set up to seal Dante and the gold away forever. But just before they can have their happy ending, Guerro confronts our heroes, nearly killing Chase with an RPG. Once Nate deals with him, he helps Chase escape the crumbling temple. Sully meets them at the exit, and using the helicopter he stole earlier, the trio make their way to safety. Nate and Chase have a moment together, but just before they kiss, Sully interrupts them with a story about two gorgeous nurses in Buenos Aires. Uncharted Eye of Indra. Okay, so it's not exactly a game, but this motion comic tells a short story that happens in Indonesia, just before Drake's fortune. Nate meets an American crime lord named Daniel Pinkerton, who wants our hero to find the Eye of Indra. This rare amulet could be worth billions of dollars, so Nate works with a local named Rika Raja to do some research. They deduce that the amulet is hidden inside Pinkerton's home. However, instead of letting the crime lord know, Nate decides to work with Rika and her brother Eddie to steal the Eye of Indra for himself. They infiltrate Pinkerton's home, but get cornered in a gunfight. So Nate thinks of the only plan that will save them. They get captured. But just before they do, Nate hides Eddie Eddie's gun under a table, calling it his ace in the hole. After some intense torture, Nate reveals that the amulet is in Pinkerton's safe. As Pinkerton marvels at the amulet, Rika breaks free, grabs Eddie's gun, and shoots Pinkerton and his men. The trio meets up outside, celebrating their victory, but then Rika pulls a gun on the other two and takes the treasure for herself. 3 days later, Nate recounts the whole story to Sully, who asks how Nate plans to fund his next adventure, finding Sir Francis Drake's coffin. At that moment, a documentary by Elena Fisher plays on TV. Nate points toward it, saying that she's the key to funding his next expedition. He plans on bringing her to Drake's coffin, and her producers will foot the bill. Uncharted, Drake's fortune. Sure enough, we find Nate with Elena, who's filming Sir Francis Drake's coffin. Nate busts it open and finds his diary. Unfortunately, his celebration gets cut short when they're attacked by pirates led by none other than Eddie Raja. Nate's ship gets wrecked, but Sully flies in on his seaplane to save him and Elena. Nate and Sully leave Elena behind to follow Francis Drake's trail to El Dorado. You might think of it as the famed city of gold, but Nate finds out it's actually just a golden statue. In the Amazon rainforest, Nate stumbles upon the next clue on an old U-boat, pointing to an undocumented island. However, just as Nate and Sully prepare for the next stop, another treasure hunter named Gabriel Roman holds them at gunpoint. Roman works with Atok Navarro, an archaeologist who also knows his way around a gun. Navarro takes the map from Nate, and Roman shoots Sully square in the chest. Just before Nate also meets his end, the U-boat explodes behind them, giving our hero a small window to escape, but not enough time to grieve. Nate regroups with Elena, and the two make their way to that mysterious island. There, they find a monastery and Sully. He explains that Drake's diary stopped the bullet, and he had been working with Roman to stay alive ever since. Nate and Elena head down some catacombs that lead to Sir Drake's body. However, they also come across Eddie and his pirates. Suddenly, they're all faced with a greater threat: horrifying, mutated humanoids. They all team up, but Eddie dies in the fight. Diving deeper into the passage, Nate learns that the Nazis were also trying to find El Dorado back in the day. However, the statue was cursed, turning whoever gets near it into whatever those creatures that attack them are. They learn that the hard way. When Nate returns to Elena, Roman and Navarro have taken her hostage. Now on a rescue mission, he and Sully head toward the final showdown. Roman and Navarro find El Dorado, which is actually just a sarcophagus. Roman opens it only to turn into a monster. Navarro puts a bullet in his head, revealing his master plan to sell the statue as a bioweapon. But by thinking quickly on his feet, Nate sinks the cursed statue and Navarro to the bottom of the ocean, saving Elena in the process. Just before Nate and Elena share a romantic kiss, Sully interrupts, revealing a hoard of gold he stole from Eddie's pirates. Alright, I'm starting to wonder if Sully's doing this on purpose. Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. 2 years after Drake's fortune, we see Nate horribly wounded in a train in the middle of a snowstorm. Oh, and the train is hanging off the edge of a cliff. Nate's just one wrong move away from falling to his death. So yeah, this is not a great situation for him to be in. But let's just flash back to a couple of months ago. Nate's infiltrating a museum in Istanbul with his old colleague Harry Flynn and his old squeeze, Chloe Frazer. Together, they find a map that reveals what Marco Polo's lost crew carried before they got swept away to Borneo. It's a mysterious artifact named the Chintamani Stone, obtained from Shambhala, or Shangri-La if you prefer. Think of this large blue stone as like the holy grail of Hinduism and Buddhism. Before Nate could do anything about it though, Flynn double-crosses him, landing our hero 3 months of jail time. Luckily, Sully and Chloe bail Nate out before he has to serve all 3 months of that jail time. The three head to Borneo to catch up with Flynn, who's now working with Serbian war criminal Zoran Lazarevic. Long story short, Nate learns that Marco Polo's crew left the Chintamani Stone in Shambhala, terrified of its power. He also finds a purba, a dagger-like key, along with a map that points to Nepal as the next step to Shambhala. Of course, Flynn confronts them before they leave Borneo, and Chloe has to hold Nate hostage to maintain her cover as a mole in Lazarevic's army. Flynn takes the map, but Chloe helps Nate keep the purba. Nate and Chloe head to Nepal, where they run into Elena. She's hot on Lazarevic's trail, hoping to expose his location, seeing as the whole world believes he died a long time ago. The group enters the Nepalese temple, and Nate and Chloe figure out that Shambhala is in the Himalayas. After leaving the temple, Lazarevic's men attack, and eventually Flynn catches up to them too. Lazarevic takes the purba and map from Nate, and he orders Flynn to kill Nate and Elena. But Nate and Elena escape, and she helps him get onto Lazarevic's train to rescue Chloe. While there, Nate recovers the purba and meets Chloe, although she's angry over his relationship with Elena. During their argument, Flynn shoots Nate, causing him to flee toward the back of the train. As he catches his breath, he shoots some propane tanks, propelling his section of the train off a cliff. Eventually, Nate wakes up in a small Tibetan village where he finds Elena. She introduces him to Karl Schaefer, a former German soldier who previously hunted for the Chintamani Stone. He urges Nate to go to some nearby temple ruins to learn more about the stone. There, Nate finds Schaefer's old unit, killed by Schaefer himself. He learns that the stone gives a lot of power, and it's dangerous in the wrong hands. When he gets back to the village, Nate finds out Lazarevic took Schaefer and the purba. So, Nate and Elena chase him to the monastery that leads to Shambhala. There, Nate runs into Chloe, and he takes the purba from her. Then, as he's about to open the door to Shambhala with Elena, Lazarevic walks in, using Elena and Chloe as bargaining chips to control Nate. As the doors open, Lazarevic prepares to kill Nate, but then the guardians of Shambhala ambush them, giving Nate, Elena, and Chloe time to break free. The three continue through Shambhala and find out that the stone is actually a blue sap from the Tree of Life. Drinking the sap would make someone nearly invincible. After Flynn blows himself up with a grenade, gravely injuring Elena, Nate asks Chloe to take Elena to safety. From there, he goes alone to stop Lazarevich from getting the sap. Unfortunately, Lazarevich just drank some of the sap, but no worries, Nate still defeats him. With Lazarevich down, Nate ignites all the sap, blowing up Shambhala and leaving Lazarevich to the Guardians. Now that the day is saved, Chloe asks Nate how he feels about Elena. Nate admits he has feelings for Elena, so Chloe amicably walks away. Nate and Elena finally kiss without Sully to interrupt about some stupid story about Buenos Aires, and their new relationship officially begins. Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. After 2 years pass, Nate and Sully meet with Charlie Cutter and Talbot in a speakeasy. These two want to buy Nate's ring, but the deal goes south and the entire bar erupts into a fight. Outside, the boys are overwhelmed, and Catherine Marlowe, the English secret society leader Nate met in Colombia 20 years ago, takes Nate's ring. But it was all a setup. Cutter had been in cahoots with Nate the whole time, and the ring Marlowe took was actually just a fake one. With Chloe's help, our heroes track Marlowe down to a secret library where Nate learns about Francis Drake's hidden voyage to Ubar, the city of brass. Their next destinations are in France and Syria, so they all split up. Chloe and Cutter take Syria, while Nate and Sully take France. Nate uncovers one half of an amulet that mentions a city in Yemen, but he needs the other half to figure it out. Unfortunately, Talbot had been tracking him and forces Nate to cough up the amulet. Okay, so if they got caught, then Nate and Sully figure Chloe and Cutter are in trouble too. So they head to Syria, hoping to stop Talbot's men from ambushing them as well. Turns out, they were completely fine. Well, until Charlie gets drugged and attacks Nate, but he snaps out of it before he does anything too serious. After that, the four of them find the other half of the amulet and find out exactly where to go in Yemen. Of course, Talbot takes the second piece from them, so the bad guys learn where to go next too. So Nate and Sully hoof it to Yemen, where they meet Elena. She and Nate split a while back, although she's still wearing her wedding ring, and now she's a foreign correspondent there. Against her better judgment, she hands them both press passes, helping them sneak into the city. In the city, Nate gets drugged just like Charlie did, and after he comes down, he finds himself having a pleasant chat with Talbot and Marlowe. Sure enough, they take Drake's real ring from him. Nate reunites with Elena, only to find out that Marlowe's taken Sully to the desert. Elena helps Nate get onto a cargo plane headed to the convoy, and he ends up crash landing the plane. He's not really a subtle guy, you know? In the Rub al-Khali desert, Nate meets Salim, who rescues him from some of Marlowe's men. Salim warns Nate that Ubar holds a brass vessel containing the Jinn, evil spirits that could destroy all of humanity. The next day, Nate and Salim ride out to Marlowe's convoy to rescue Sully, and then they head to Ubar. While there, Nate drinks some of the local water, which causes him to hallucinate, kinda like when he was drugged. He realizes that whatever is in the water doomed the city, and that's what Marlowe is after. As Marlowe and her goons start to pull the brass urn out of the water, Nate shoots the crane. He launches a couple more shots, starting a chain reaction that leads to the whole city collapsing. Ubar sinks into a huge pit of quicksand, and Marlowe gets caught in it. Nate tries to save her, but she sinks and ends up lost forever. Nate and Sully head to the airport, ready to go home. They have a heart-to-heart talk, and Sully reveals he's always seen Nate as a son. He takes out Nate's wedding ring, which he kept safe ever since Nate and Elena separated. Elena comes up to Nate and sees he's wearing their wedding band again. The two embrace before going home on Sully's new seaplane. Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. 3 years after that business in Yemen, Nate works at a salvage company trying to live a normal, boring life. Then, his older brother Sam shows up out of nowhere, alive and in the flesh. A drug lord named Hector Alcazar broke him out, and now Alcazar wants Sam to find Avery's treasure. In other words, Sam needs Nate's help, so it's time for our hero to come out of retirement. Nate tells Elena that he took a salvage job in Malaysia, but he actually heads to an auction party with Sully and Sam. A crucifix similar to the one they found back in Panama 15 years ago is on sale, and they believe it holds the key to finding Avery's treasure. They steal it, but not after Nate trades blows with Nadine Ross, leader of the paramilitary organization called Shoreline. He learns that Shoreline is working with Rafe Adler, Nate's old friend who's still after Avery's treasure after all these years. They fly to Avery's grave in Scotland and explore some underground catacombs. Their next stop lies in Kings Bay, near Madagascar. There, they learn that Avery, Thomas II, and 10 other pirates had pooled their treasure hoards together, stashing it away somewhere. The next clue lies in one of 2 towers, but Rafe and Shoreline are already scouring them. To play catch-up, Sam heads to one, while Nate and Sully head to another. Nate figures out that the treasure hoard is in Libertalia, a secret pirate colony. Soon after, Rafe calls him, revealing he's been tracking them via GPS in their phones. Nate regroups with Sam, and they smash their phones, but as they return to their hotel room, Nate runs into none other than Elena. She knows Nate's been lying about that Malaysia job. Sure enough, the couple gets into an argument, and she storms out, telling Nate to do what he needs to do. Sully goes after her while Nate and Sam get ready. So, they head for Libertalia, where they find out that a class struggle forced the rich pirates to found their own settlement, New Devon. On the way there, Rafe confronts them and reveals that he got Sam out of prison, not Alcazar. Sam made up the story to get the treasure by any means necessary. Nate feels betrayed, but Sam still protects him when Rafe tries to kill him. Nate falls down a cliff, and Elena rescues him after Sully convinced her to come back and help. While she nurses nurses him back to health. They come to an understanding after Nate recounts his relationship with Sam. Together, they retrieve Sam, with Sully on standby with the getaway vehicle. However, Sam still wants to go for the treasure, so Nate reluctantly chases after him. Finally, they catch up to Rafe and Nadine on Avery's treasure-loaded ship. Thing is, Nadine's disgusted with how everyone's killing each other, so she double-crosses Rafe and bounces. Nate and Rafe literally cross swords, and Rafe ends up getting killed by the very treasure he sought for so long. Nate saves Sam and escapes the burning and sinking ship. From there, the Drake brothers catch up with Elena and Sully, and the four of them finally head home. Sam and Sully become business partners, while Elena restarts her career as a documentarian so she can join Nate on his expeditions. Years later, Nate and Elena have a lovely beach home and a teenage daughter, Cassie. Just like her parents, she has a curious mind, so when she finds out about their previous expeditions, she asks them what gives. Nate and Elena finally tell their daughter about their past, starting with that cursed treasure of El Dorado. While Nate's journey seems to be over, it looks like Naughty Dog is open to exploring other side characters. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy takes place after Uncharted 4 and follows Chloe and Nadine's journey through India. With the help of Sam, they obtain the Tusk of Ganesh and stop a civil war from breaking out. Chloe and Nadine forge an unexpectedly strong bond and partnership, with Nadine getting a taste for the treasure hunting game. And so, the two vow to become partners in crime in the cutthroat treasure hunting world. And that's a wrap on the Uncharted timeline. Nathan Drake has had a number of adventures in his time, but now it's time to let him relax and enjoy his time as a parent. What's your favorite Uncharted game? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Leaderboard. We're 1 million players and counting. I'm your host Dan, thank you for watching.